How about a Clipper mailbag, Clipper Nation? Haven't done one in a while. In this episode, I'm going to be taking your questions from Twitter and answering them. Going to be talking about some of the obvious questions about the Clippers going forward, some stuff about potential good and bad playoff matchups, and then some fun Clippers stuff to end. You're going to be hearing a lot of different topics in this one, answering your questions on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and in my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I want you to hit the notification bell so you know every single time we post a video. And maybe give me even more questions for another mailbag before the season resumes. Why not? I mean, I am looking for things to talk about, so I did a Twitter mailbag for this one. Let's do a YouTube one. You guys are the most active in the comments about anything, so go ahead. Maybe we can do a YouTube mailbag as well. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the obvious question that several people asked, and then playoff matchup stuff, good and bad, and then some fun Clipper things at the end. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy sports platform in North America. All you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. But let's get into it, like the dome, with our first question. By the way, such a rainy day out in Los Angeles. It is no good. It is no good right now, at least for people like me who don't like rain. But let's start with the first question, and that comes from Tyler at LA Protech on Twitter, and he asks, what do you think is the solution for teams with length for the Clippers as presently constructed? So obviously this is something we've talked about at length. This is the obvious question that was going to be asked. It was basically echoed by Jonathan Ang at John_Ang4, saying, without any additions to buy out guys, how can the Clippers improve internally against the teams with front court size to win? So I talked about it a little bit the last couple of episodes. I think the number one is you're going to have to really lean into offense being what gives you the advantage. So if Kawhi Leonard is at the 4 or Amir Coffey is at the 4, you're going to have to really have the spacing. I'm a little concerned. I would wonder how a bench lineup with Westbrook, one of 2-1-3 or Harden, and then Amir and Mason would work, because technically you still have two non-spacers in Mason and Russ. But I feel like they've not been bad with each other as Clippers. So that's doable. I think it really comes down to guys making shots offensively and creating good looks. Because ideally, hopefully you have enough one-on-one advantages with Kawhi, Paul George, and James Harden against a team that plays with more size in the front court. And that's really the answer is these three guys, Kawhi, James, Paul, even Russ, to be honest, they need to get downhill one-on-one and exploit this size. Now, the main problems come defensively and on the glass, right? And I think before we talk about any real lineup changes, there has to be a level of pride with staying in front of the ball. Because staying in front of the ball will allow your defense to not have to rotate, not have to help. So then when you play help defense, if the helper isn't helped, there will be somebody for an offensive rebound for the other team. What you need is to stay in front of the ball. So when we go small, we need to do a good job of everybody taking the challenge one-on-one. Because once you start getting in rotation and shots go up, a lot of times there are bodies free for offensive rebounds. And then in terms of rebounds, everybody just needs to, I know this sounds really cliche, but seriously, we didn't make a change. Take pride one-on-one and have to gang rebound. We're a smaller team, so everybody needs to box out. I've noticed Terrence Mann lately is not boxing out like that. I've noticed it. Terrence, come on, brother. Please. You've been a good rebounder in the past, but it can't just be you rely on your athleticism and go up and get it. You got to put your body in front, get low, spread your arms, butt into the defender. You know how it goes. And then explode. We need to do a better job as a team. Now, the other answer is potentially trying Daniel Tice with Zubats or Plumlee, preferably Zubats. But if we do that, I don't think we should have Russ in the game because the spacing would be a little bit questionable, to say the least. Now, the question mark with Daniel Tice playing the 4 and why there's kind of, a resistance to that is because straight up, it's a different league now. Teams want bigger forwards at the 4, but then you see a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves or at times the Lakers, they play with Christian Wood at the 4, and the reason why they can get away with that is because they're stretch 5s or stretch 4s. So, but with Daniel Tice, this season, he's actually shooting 42% from 3, but it's not very convincing. You know what I mean? It's not enough for, in my opinion, defenses are going to respect him in any way, shape, or form. So that's the resistance. But that being said, 42% is really good. Like, why not give it a whirl? We have nothing to lose, and it's only for specific matchups. We have nothing to lose in the regular season by trying it. We have the Lakers coming up. We got Minnesota again, I believe twice. So we've got to try it. Now, so those would be all my answers. Another question asked by Jeff Gorell, and there might be some people in the comments that wondering the same thing. He says, realistically, how does PJ fit in? In my opinion, PJ doesn't. He could not stay in front of the ball when he was playing before, defensively. And then offensively, he shot 29% and 27% from 3. So that's not somebody that belongs in a rotation on a championship-level team. And last year, he really hurt James Harden at times, spacing-wise, in Games 6 and 7. And Joe Mazzulla made the adjustment of playing off of him with the Time Lord and having him in help. And it really worked. It really changed that pick and roll with Embiid and Harden. So I would not want PJ Tucker. There's no role for him except for being a Udonis Haslem-like grit guy on the bench, and he's not willing to do that. So there is no role for him. And then we got another question here from Angel Fan at OCXG1958. I like this guy a lot. He says, anything Clips can do on the buyout market to offset the problems they have against big lineups, got exposed during Minnesota, etc. So again, it's in the same topic. And I'll say this, the buyout market. There is Chimezie Metu, former USC Trojan, pretty mobile, good size, but he's not shooting well from 3 this year, about 29%. Daniel Tice is shooting better than him. He's just not nearly the athlete or mobile. He's much younger, Chimezie is. Then there's the option of Wenyen Gabriel. Now, he's not necessarily that much of a stretch, but he's physical. He's going to work hard. He'll pick up some fouls for you. So I think Wenyen Gabriel, he's not too bad of an option either. But then there's my favorite potential option that, again, was shooting 35% from 3 last year for the Celtics, Blake Griffin. Bring him home. Another big body, can give you some spot minutes, take some charges, get physical, maybe knock down the 3, make some good reads in the short roll. I mean, come on. Could you imagine James Harden, Blake Griffin in the short roll? I think that'd be some pretty good stuff. Russ at the dunker. Blake to Russ from Harden. I mean, come on. So I don't think they're going to go to that because I don't think these players entice them much. But, I mean, I'm Team Blake. And the last question comes from my boy Spence, loyal Clipper fan, even before me. If we don't sign an addition to our front court to help 2-1-3 and our guards, what's a lineup that can help those guys from getting banged up as much as you'd like to see without PG or Kawhi playing the 4? And my answer to that is what I said, is Tice, because otherwise, if Coffey's in and Kawhi is in, Kawhi is really going to be guarding the bigger guy. He's stronger. So It's Tice. Plumlee and Zoo together is not an option. The spacing is really, really bad. Even in the 90s, I don't think they would run that with two guys that couldn't even make a mid-range. It's not that Zoo can't make a mid-range, but he won't take it. So anyway, but coming up, going to be talking about some matchup stuff, good and bad matchups for the Clippers in the playoffs. Going to be talking about it all coming up. I got to tell you a little something about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy entry app in North America, the best fantasy sports platform in North America. And here's how it works. All you got to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. This week, I'm selecting Kawhi Leonard with more on points against the Thunder. I think he's going to really perform in that game. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, so let's talk about some matchup-related questions. The first one comes from Colangelo's Last Burner at Your Goats Burner. He says, what teams present good and bad matchups for the Clippers in a playoff series? Like, who don't you want to face in the first round? Okay, even if you think you can beat them. All right, well, I'll tell you who I don't want to face. I don't want to face the Dallas Mavericks because it just feels like Luka, he might get us eventually 3 times. I mean, I feel like we are the better team, but with the additions of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, it seems like everybody is now super high on Dallas because Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively together pose 2 big lob threats. And then you do have Kyrie Irving. If he's healthy in a playoff series, I mean, we didn't play against, I mean, they had Jalen Brunson, but that wasn't the Jalen Brunson we know now or even the year after that. He was really played off the floor in that series against Dallas. This time having Kyrie Irving, I mean, that is going to be tough. I still don't love the Mavericks' defense on the perimeter. I think they're very reliant on Derrick Jones Jr. I think that Kawhi would still have a field day with them. But I don't know if I'd want to play them. I mean, especially in the first round. If we play them in the second round, it is what it is. Because beggars can't be choosers in the second round of the NBA playoffs. But first round, I would prefer not to play the Dallas Mavericks. The Minnesota Timberwolves are obviously a bad matchup for us at this point. I think that's very clear. Obviously, playoff basketball is different. But just from a schematic perspective, they have the guys for us. And they won't play us in the first round, though, so it's kind of irrelevant. The Lakers, this particular year, I'm not a fan of playing them because of their size, and then we don't have the same bodies to throw at LeBron. I mean, you want to put Kawhi or Paul on him, that's a little bit much for them throughout the course of a series. And the other thing that concerns me about that is we don't have home court advantage really for any game. The most we have is a 50-50 split in our home games, and that's very problematic in my opinion, or unfavorable. You know, I think we are the better team, but it's a lot of pressure, and when it comes to big pressure moments, the Clippers, just being a Clipper fan, I have major PTSD, so I would prefer to stay away from the Lakers this particular year as well in the first round. And then the Denver Nuggets, but I don't think we're going to play them in the first round. The New Orleans Pelicans is an interesting one. I know everyone's probably screaming at the TV right now, or what about the Pelicans, D? What about the Pelicans? I know. And I'll say this. I would be a little nervous playing them because of our matchup in the regular season, but in a playoff series, Zion hasn't played one playoff game. I really would take our chances with it. I would much rather play the Warriors. I would much rather play the Sacramento Kings. Would I rather play the Thunder? We've played them once with Kawhi and we beat them. But, yeah, I mean, are the Thunder better than the Pelicans? Because the record says they are. The Pelicans have a little more experience in the sense that they've been together a bit longer. And in the 2022 playoffs, Ingram and CJ got some experience together with Valanciunas. But the Thunder are probably the better team. I wouldn't mind playing either, to be honest. Like we should be beating either of them. We're James Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George. Like at this point, if they're gonna win a ring together, they're gonna win it right now. It's not gonna be the Thunder and the, who's the team? Pelicans that knock us out. It can't be. It can't. They mustn't let it happen. And then there's the Suns, who preferably I'd like to play in the second round. I actually want to play them in the second round. But first round, it's a little nervy playing against those guys in the first round. Doesn't really end well for us a lot of times. Although we've only played them once in the first round. So, yeah, my take with that is I want to play Phoenix in the second round of the NBA playoffs. Now, another question in relation to matchups. This one, actually, no, it was basically the same question from Joey Netland. He's a Russ fan. Joey_Netland4 says, what do you think the best and worst playoff matchups would be for the Clippers? So, worst, Minnesota Timberwolves and Denver Nuggets. Best, probably the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, I don't know about any other one else being on the level of the Sacramento Kings. Is there anyone else? I mean, if the Houston Rockets somehow made it, but they won't, I would be down to play them. The Utah Jazz. I can't really say the Warriors would be better than the Kings because they scare me a little more than the Kings just because they have Draymond, Clay, and Steph. Mainly Steph. And I like the Sacramento Kings too, but they just don't defend well enough for me to be afraid of them in the playoffs. Whereas the Thunder are a good defensive team. The Pelicans have improved massively defensively. The Nuggets are champs. The Suns aren't great defensively, but am I more scared of the Kings or a team with KD and Devin Booker on it? Come on. Question answers itself. So the worst matchups, Minnesota and Denver, and the best would be the Sacramento Kings, I would say. The next question comes from Trekker at Francisco_Ant on Twitter. He says, what's the future of the Clippers realistically look like as a championship contending? What the future of the Clippers realistically look like as a championship contender, given our obvious disadvantages against bigger teams? I kind of already addressed that, but he says, should we be happy just making it to the Western Conference Finals and preparing for the next season at Intuit? What expectations should the fan base have? Absolutely not. We should not just be happy making it to the conference finals. This team, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, was put together to win a championship. And all of a sudden, we lost belief in that, so we felt like we needed a third star. Now that we have a third star and it's working, and it's the best Clipper team we've ever had at this point of the season, eye test-wise, and tied for the record, 36-17, we should absolutely have a championship or bust attitude. And I know that's crazy as a Clipper fan, that we've never made the finals and this and that, but we should. We have a player that's good enough to do it. We have a team of stars. We got to do it now. Teams are not getting any there's a lot of young teams in the league with budding stars, and we're not getting any younger. We got to get it now. This is a great chance right here. Last year at the Staples Center, always will be able to stake a claim that this is their arena to a degree by getting something that you can't take away, a championship. Would be poetic, and Laker fans would hate it. So that would be my answer to that. We need to be championship or bust mindset. Because that's what this team was put together to do. That's why you went for Harden and traded a pick for him. But anyway, then the next question comes from Optimist Prime Rib at usual_suspect89. He says, deep dive on what the hell happened to Ty Lue last season. Yeah, let's put it this way. I can't do a deep dive, but I'm just going to say this. I think he became too close to some players, Reggie and Senior, and empowered them so much to the point where they thought they were untouchable and had an ego that was too big for what they were good, for how good they were. And I think Ty had problems. Oh, I don't know why he was so not in favor of Terrence Mann for so long, but and the front office had to strong arm him. But I will say, he does prioritize spacing. I've learned that he's an offense first mind. And Marcus Morris, he was cool with him. The next question comes from Peter Boone, my Belgian brother over here. He says, let's see, where is the all right, he says, is this the best version of Harden that we have on our team? No, it is not. But then he says, maybe not stats-wise, but as a player to win games and go for the championship. Well, I'll say this. With the Houston Rockets as the number one option, he won a lot of games, and he was close to the championship, but I never was truly a believer of Harden as a number one option. His stands are going to hate I said that, but sue me. Second option, Harden. I think if he would have been the second option in his prime, he could have gotten a ring probably. Some people, his stands would say definitely. I say probably. Because I think it's hard to adjust to that, especially with the way that Harden plays. But he did it with Embiid. Came up short. So, third option, Harden, absolutely is the best in terms of trying to get him a ring. So, I would say, yeah, in terms of winning basketball, I think him not neglecting the mid-range shot is major. Those years with D'Antoni where he neglected the mid-range shot, it made it so that you're either getting a floater or a layup, a three for him, or a three for someone else. And sometimes threes aren't going to fall and teams are taking the rim away. You got to have something else. And I like that he takes the mid-range now. In the last two years, he's done it. So, I would say yes, but it's not the best version of Harden. Of course not. And he says, is this the best team for him to fit in that he has been on? I think Brooklyn was very similar, personally. Rene Zarate at Renegade Clips is our last question of this segment, and he asks, how important is this season dependent on how this year... I think he meant how important is next season dependent on how this year ends, good and bad. I think it's very dependent, but then he asks, how realistic is it to have a drastic change in general for this team headed into a dome? I don't think it's going to happen next season. Now, after next season, who knows? But, Paul George getting extended, that's major. Kawhi Leonard will have to validate his extension with the play in the playoffs this season. The extension that he just received. Paul George obviously still hasn't gotten it yet. And someone else, actually I'm going to end it with his question, said, I would definitely want to hear your thoughts on the chances of this team sticking together after this year, especially after the weird responses to PG re-sign. I think the main thing is the Clippers realize we shouldn't pay PG and Kawhi the same amount of money. And I think they are a little bit more sure about Kawhi's basketball. I think they're just afraid of his health. And they took a gamble by paying him right now and just not wanting to get into the weeds with that drama in the offseason. But Paul George, he is not, the way he plays, he's so up and down. I wouldn't give him that money until he proves it a little more. But I think Paul George will be here. I mean, if Kawhi's here, I think Paul will be here. And because we're going into the stadium, new stadium, they're not going to blow this team up. But anyway, coming up, going to be talking about some fun Clipper stuff. There were some other questions that were a little bit more lighthearted. Going to be talking about those coming up. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I really think that the Clippers are going to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder on Thursday. Why? Because they're extremely determined. They're ready to make a statement after the All-Star break, and we're just better. We're just better. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, now for some lighthearted questions, some fun Clipper stuff. Let's talk about it. And the first question is going to come from Vampire Brody. Yes, Vampire Brody. And he says, shout out to my guy Vampire Brody, at Eris Tires 03. He says, favorite Clipper moment this season and all time. Man, what was my favorite Clipper moment? I'd say the comeback against the Nets. I'd say that was my favorite Clipper moment this season. And then my favorite Clipper moment all time is definitely when we broke the curse, the Terrence Mann game. No doubt about it. And then so my next question comes from Jay. This is my guy Jay, loyal Clipper fan. See him at the games all the time. At Hoops with Jay. Says the Clippers recently emailed fans asking which Clippers should be the first to get their number retired. I was part of this survey. You and I have in the past had convos about which Clippers are deserving of it. But who do you think should be the very first one? Blake, McAdoo, one of 213? I'll say this. Not one of 213. Bob McAdoo, I think he deserves to have his number retired for this franchise, but I don't think he should be the first because I would like it to be an LA person. I would think Ralph Lawler should be the first one, especially considering his age. And yeah, he's a Clipper, so Ralph Lawler should be the first, number 100. But if I had to choose a player, it would have to be Blake Griffin. So that's my answer to that. He just changed so much for us. He was our guy. Then the next question, I think the last question, comes from Joe Luis. And he's asking about red jerseys. Yes or no? Of course. Red jerseys next year. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So, yeah. That's basically it. I'm pretty sure that was all of them that were worth answering. No offense to the other commenters. I think the last one, Jonathan Eng had another question. He said, since PG First has been dealing with the groin injury, his performance has been up and down, with plenty of low IQ mistakes. Before I even answer the next part of it, is that unnatural for PG, Jonathan? Even when he's fully healthy? Performance has been up and down with plenty of low IQ mistakes? I mean, come on. What is his outlook for the stretch run looking like? Can he reclaim his spot as the second best player on this team and be back on his bully-ish? I absolutely think he can. I think it all depends on his choices, and I hope his groin is okay. But that's it for me in this one, guys. YouTube, let me know what you want if you want a mailbag. Comment any questions you have that are not those. I feel like I answered so many, and those are like the major ones, but let me know. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Hit the notification bell. Get us to 5K, guys. I said let's get us to 5K before Thursday, before the season resumes. We're almost there. Please let any Clipper fan you know. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.